I want to take questions from the audience. I know you must have a lot of them. It's funny, Dr. Burton suggested before we start through an email to me that maybe we should talk about how to pose the question of consciousness. And I said, yeah. Now at the end you're saying, maybe we should have talked about how to pose the question of consciousness. So, Orman Ottos, do you have a question? Let's get a microphone to him.
Oh, I can just talk loud.
Keep it back from that.
Oh, here's another microphone.
I'm currently reading Doug Hofstadter's I'm a Strange Loop, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. As close as I can figure, Hofstadter thinks that consciousness is a pattern of algorithm-mediated reactions. There is no consciousness when you're born, and that you come with a set of evolutionarily developed algorithms that guide you in a direction that you will automatically react to certain things. Everybody knows about 40-minute-old babies recognizing a smiling face, and onward and upward until you get to people naturally liking democracy or theocracy or patriarchal divisions. I've got 50 questions here. The question that I'm trying to, you seem to all be dancing around is there consciousness at all? You're familiar with Susan Blackmore and her book, Conversations on Consciousness, where she basically asked the same question that Joe's asking of 30 friends of hers, and then wrote a book of their responses, and then wrote an essay at the end where she said, obviously, we have no idea.
So we wasted our time. Great.
Use this microphone on the panel on that for the questions. Just pull it right on.
I just want to say that I think, obviously there are no answers. It's good to engage questions, but the questions about consciousness are fundamentally important to how we behave with each other at this time in human history. And consciousness does matter. It matters how we story our lives. It matters that we become aware of the fact that we story our lives and that we see the world through a set of lenses or worldviews. And that ultimately that shapes the ways in which we're going to engage one another. And so to say that it doesn't matter to me feels very nihilistic, and as though there won't be an option that can promote human transformation in ways that ultimately can build toward a much more pro-social way of behaving. So those are my thoughts.
There's more questions in the audience.
That's a wonderful way of saying that, how we story our lives. That leads into my question, because we're here at a literary event. How does literary stuff affect consciousness? If there was nothing as narrative, if we basically just had associational linked thoughts with none of this wonderful phrasing and parts of speech and prepositions and everything being fused in what we now call narrative, we call literature, how would consciousness be different? Would we even have consciousness?
Can I just say, I couldn't be a fictional character in a best-selling novel if that was the case.
Well, I think we do know that we all make up stories to explain our lives, and that storytelling is not just found in books. It's the fundamental nature of how we account for our experience. And literature, in quotes or in italics, can dramatically influence. I remember when I was about 10, I read Aerosmith, and it took a long time at UCSF before I realized how that was an entirely fallacious story, because that was the story I started with and interpreted the world with. So I think, I'll give you another example. Philip Roth was 1 year behind me in grammar school, lived a few blocks away. So Philip Roth, I always feel, is writing about my neighborhood and reinterpreting it to me. And I see he makes explicit the stories that are implicit in my own mind.
Could I actually just one very, very quick follow-up to that? It was sort of deliberate that I said that consciousness is a performance, with all that that entails in terms of staging and stage setting and backgrounding and presuppositions about who you're performing for or what the problems are that potentially threaten performance, which is related to the issues about the literary. Thank you.
As a reformed novelist, I just would like to make a comment, is that part of it is, these are different ways of knowing. I had the great fortune of spending some time with David Bohm when I was a young man. And he said to me, the problem is at different levels we have different ways of knowing. So I think that science is a very good way of determining certain aspects of life. And so is literature. Literature works at a different level and have different endpoints. So I think the consciousness that we experience has a huge story component and it also has a scientific component. And God bless the person who can figure out how to put the two together because they are really fundamentally different processes.